The Gospel of Gold by G.S. Lewis. A noise of scraping sneakers caused Gold to look up. Until that moment, he had been wholly preoccupied with his digging, but now he saw that a girl had approached the Pokemon Center. She looked to be in her upper teens, wearing a backpack, loose jogging clothes, and a hat with the league symbol on it. In her hand was an open money purse, which she seemed to rifle desperately through with her other hand. As Gold watched, she squeezed her eyes closed and dropped to her knees in a slumped posture of abject defeat. A strangled sob burst from her throat, but she quenched it quickly. Still, Gold could see her shoulders shaking, and it was obvious she was crying. Without a second thought, he approached her cautiously. "Hey, are you okay?" It was a stupid question, one that people instinctively ask others whenever such a situation arose. The distressed party was almost never okay, but the asking was meant to gauge whether he or she would accept help or was otherwise too proud. She shook her head, clasping 2 Pokeballs in her hands and lowering her head until they touched her chin. Gold reached out to console her, but stopped before his hand came down upon her back. He wasn't sure why, but he put it out of his mind. "Why are you crying?" he asked. The girl looked at him briefly, sniffling and wiping her eyes. She looked down at her 2 Pokeballs and placed them on the ground, the heel of her palm on her forehead.
"It's not fair,"
she babbled, her throat still choked with tears.
"I tried so hard. I was the top of my class, and I had a strategy laid out. I really thought I was prepared for this."
Gold cocked his head quizzically. "You mean the Johto Journey?" he guessed. The girl was halfway through a nod of affirmation when a distant screech, like that of a hawk, tore through the air. They both jumped and looked in the direction it had come from, Faulkner's gym. The girl's eyes brimmed over again.
"I can't beat him, no matter how many times I challenge him," she said in quiet despair. "They told me in class that gyms were hard, but the first one was only meant to test your basic understanding of evolution and type advantage."
The shrill cry echoed again, and Gold wondered grimly what poor creature was getting pecked apart by Faulkner's Pidgeotto. "What did you use?" he asked, in as kind a voice as he could muster. The girl blinked and looked up at him, wiping her nose.
"You know,"
she said after a moment, with a bitter smile,
"it's funny. I'm not used to sharing things with anyone, yet here I am, spilling my feelings out to a total stranger."
She laughed humorlessly, shrugged, and tapped the buttons on the front of her 2 Pokeballs. They flashed open, and 2 creatures materialized on the ground, lying limply. One was a sheep-like Pokemon with pink skin and a white fleece. The other was a yellow quadruped, whose appearance Gold could only describe as a miniature long-necked dinosaur. He recognized them as Flaffy and Bayleaf, 2 second-stage Pokemon, the latter of which was a starter. Both had their eyes closed, bruised badly, and breathing shallowly. The sight of them was enough for the girl to put her hand over her mouth and look away, her face stricken.
"I don't have the money to heal them again,"
she burbled, her words so congested that Gold almost couldn't make them out.
"And I'm running out of time. I know now that I'll never get 8 badges, but if I could have only gotten 1, just 1,
she covered her face.
then it would make the shame more bearable when I got home."
Gold narrowed his eyes darkly as the larger picture came together in his head. For all of its grandstanding and promises of glory, the Johto Pokemon League had grossly neglected the well-being of the trainers it sponsored, not to mention their Pokemon. On one side, the first gatekeeper made his badge next to impossible to obtain. On the other, the Pokemon centers seemed to charge exorbitant prices for trainers to heal their Pokemon before they could lose to Faulkner again. Gold knew from experience how difficult it was to earn a league sponsorship, so this girl, whatever her past, wasn't dumb. The fact that she held 2 second evolution Pokemon at this stage in her journey proved that she wasn't neglecting training either. She was simply cornered, trapped by misled ambition. "Gold," came Spirit's voice, breaking him from his thoughts. He snapped to attention, glancing at the girl for a moment to see if she had heard anything. There was no change in her features. "Reach out and touch those 2 Pokemon," Spirit directed. "Lay on your hands and speak life back into them." Gold's heartbeat increased as he processed what Spirit had just asked of him. She was the life giver, and by virtue of her mere presence, Gold had twice felt himself renewed in her. Now, however, she was telling him to give life. Him, a regular human with no power to speak of. Nevertheless, Gold extended his arms out and rested his hands on the foreheads of the Flaffy and Bayleaf both at once. The girl turned to look at him fully, her face a mixture of confusion and curiosity. "What?" she started. "Be healed," Gold said. Though a rational part of his mind chided him for being foolish and touching someone else's Pokemon, his words came out strong, commanding even. He stroked the 2 Pokemon's heads, and under his hands, their eyes flicked open. As he withdrew his arm, both of them rose to stand on their feet, and the girl gasped in bewilderment. The bruises on each Pokemon were gone, as thoroughly as if they had never been there in the first place. They stood for a moment, looking in surprise at each other, then danced around in sudden circles, bleating happy sounds of elation. The girl's jaw hung as she stared at the miracle which had taken place in the blink of an eye. She looked back at Gold, disbelief and amazement filling her face. "How did you do that?" she asked in a breathy voice. "What did you do?" I made them well again," Gold stuttered, staring at his own hands. He looked back up at her face, then at the Pokemon Center. Would you, excuse me for a second?" Before she could nod, he rushed the length of the Pokemon Center outer wall, not stopping until he was behind it. Slumping against it, he slid down to a squatting position, looking back down at his hands. "Spirit!" he said, feeling his pulse pounding with excitement. "I touched those Pokemon, and they were okay again! What happened to my hands?" "You marvel because you did as I commanded and it worked?" laughed Spirit gently. "You have the powers of the Life Giver now, and you will work greater things than this. But listen." Her voice grew stern. "Go back to that trainer. There is something you must tell her." "Huh?" Gold looked back up from his hands. Only then did he see the cobblestone markers in the grass before him. The back of the Pokemon Center was a graveyard. A minute later, Gold returned to the place in front of the Pokemon Center to find the girl still there, feeling her 2 Pokemon over for any residual bruising. She looked up when she saw him approach. "Thank you, but please, tell me what you did. Was it some kind of lotion that goes in through their skin?" "No," said Gold, feeling the chiding of his worldly mind at what he was about to say. He ignored it. I healed your Pokemon through the power of the spirit. It was nothing that a store-bought potion couldn't also do in a minute, so if you don't believe me, well, you don't believe me. Nevertheless, the spirit has a word for you. I sound like a Western shaman, he thought, as the girl eyed him bemusedly. He pressed on anyway. It was for your Pokemon's sake that I healed them. Over the years, our people have driven them into ever more relentless battling and striving to be the best. The Johto Pokemon League incites such behavior, and as long as you continue the challenge, you will be... Gold shrugged. Well, in league with them. The girl's expression went from curious to suspicious and calculating. I see why you were hedging your words, she said slowly, crossing her arms. So, what is this? You heal my Pokemon mysteriously, and in return, I now have to give up my dream of being a trainer? What? No! Having delivered Spirit's message, Gold returned to himself again, waving his arms in negation. You can still be a Pokemon trainer. You can do all this stuff that any league trainer would. Travel, meet new people, battle. It just wouldn't extend to the raw brutality that comes with wanting to be the best. You know, victory at any cost. The girl's face hardened into outright anger. I did want to be the best, she said testily. And I still do. I wouldn't expect a non-league trainer to understand. She turned her back, recalling both the Flaffy and Bayleaf to their Pokeballs. I appreciate you healing my Pokemon, but I have to beat Faulkner. I'm almost at the end of my time limit to get his badge, and I'm so close! Her voice shook slightly, with a subtle touch of manic obsession. Gold felt a knot of anger in his stomach. He tightened his grip on his walking stick. Tell me, he said, barely keeping his voice level. When you found out that you lacked the money to pay for another Pokemon Center visit, for whom were your tears? Your injured Pokemon, or yourself? The girl huffed and walked away, not looking at him. I warn you, Gold called after her. If you fight Faulkner again, your Pokemon will be worse off than before. I know it in my heart.